Hi, it's Nicole. We're at the end of 2023. I gave out 1,000,000 year-end awards the same time last year. This year I only have 6. But the idea is the same. Instead of top 10 or favorite books of the year, I'm going to give out awards to different books because they are brilliant and enjoyable in different ways. And it's just more fun to give out awards. So the 6 awards are favorite supporting characters, favorite protagonist, favorite audiobook, favorite novel, favorite non-fiction, and at the end, my book of the year. First of all, for my favorite supporting characters, I have 2 winners. Feel free to argue with me whether these 2 characters are actually supporting characters or are one of the many protagonists, but I've decided. The winners are Amelia from Othello and Odysseus from the Iliad. If you know Shakespeare's Othello a bit, you know that it's mostly about how Iago destroys Othello and Desdemona's marriage and life by poisoning the jealous husband against the innocent wife. Amelia is Iago's wife and Desdemona's companion and servant. She doesn't appear until Act 2, Scene 1 and says and does very little in the first half of the play. She's definitely just a supporting character at the beginning. When I read it for the first time, I didn't think she was important enough to die in this tragedy. I thought she would survive. But as the story develops, she plays an increasingly vital role. Think about it, the success of Iago's plot with this handkerchief depends entirely on Amelia's silence. Her friendship with Desdemona comes more and more to the forefront as the marriage falls apart, and she is killed in the end to vindicate Desdemona. She could have lived, but she chooses death because she will not be silent under a tyrant husband anymore. What's the point of living when the only person she loves and cares for is dead? What's left in the world is a disgusting husband who's the murderer that destroys her friend. I'll read you one example. Amelia has been in obedience to Iago all her life, but when he threatens to kill her if she speaks the truth, she says, "Thou hast not half that power to do me harm as I have to be hurt. O girl or dolt, as ignorant as dirt, thou hast done a deed. I care not for thy sword. I'll make thee known, though I lost 20 lives." I love the change I see in Amelia. I love her wise and heartfelt little chats with Desdemona in private. I love her courage to stand against evil and power, a helpless and desperate woman fighting alone. She's such a hero. The second one is Odysseus. I read the Iliad this year and was pleasantly surprised at how accessible and fun it was. I made a series of videos on individual characters from the Iliad, including Odysseus, Helen, Achilles, and Hephaestus. I think the main characters of the Iliad are Agamemnon, Achilles, and Hector, so I class Odysseus as a supporting character. He has a book all for himself called The Odyssey, right? The Odysseus I like is probably more of my interpretation of the character in the story, because there's a lot of room for interpretation when you read ancient texts like this. Maybe that's why there are so many retellings of ancient Greek and Roman myth. I explained in this video with many examples why I like Odysseus more than all the other heroes in the Iliad. I love him as an intelligent and capable warrior who has to do a lot of the dirty work and suffers under a useless commander. I imagine there's a lot of under-the-breath swearing and eye-rolling. I love that he is powerful in battles, but does not ask for trouble or fight with a death wish for fame or glory. I love it when he's overwhelmed by the flood of the enemy, he accepts the defeat and death coming his way, calmly still reflects on the situation with a clear head and stands his ground to fight. And best of all, he lives. I link my Iliad playlist here, just in case you are interested. Next, my favorite protagonist. A possible contender for my favorite protagonist is Richard III. Reason one, he's a complicated character in Shakespeare's play. There are plenty of reasons to hate him, but also enough evidence for me to see the sad side of his story and feel sorry for him. Reason two, I love both the look of Ian McKellen and Benedict Cumberbatch. And reason three, the historical Richard III was proven to be a kind man and a good king in Josephine Tey's The Daughter of Time. But alas, ladies and gentlemen, the winner of my favorite protagonist is the one and only Peter Grant from Rivers of London series. I had to think hard to decide what's the best award to give Rivers of London. It could be my favorite fantasy, though I haven't read that many fantasy novels this year. It could be my favorite novel series, but to be honest, it's the only novel series I read in 2023. It could be my favorite author. I definitely read more Ben Aronovich than any other authors, and I liked every one of his books. Its audiobook can easily be one of the best as well. It adds so much energy and humor. But I decided on my favorite protagonist because I think that's the biggest reason I love the Rivers of London series. Because Peter is such a likable person. Reading the stories is like hanging out with Peter, and I enjoyed hanging out with Peter since book one. He's so ordinary as he shops in supermarkets and eats in pubs. When on duty, he's often clueless and useless. As one of you commented, he can't keep his eyes off women and he swears constantly. But he can also rise to situations when quick thinking and brave actions are required and be a complete hero. Peter Grant is a wizard apprentice police constable from a department of London Metropolitan Police that deals with crimes that involve magic and supernatural things. Two things about him stand out specifically. Peter has a built-in sympathy and concern for the abnormal or the minority or the neglected, like the jazz vampires or people permanently in the sewers or teenagers. What do you do with them? The easiest way to solve the problem is to ignore them, get rid of them, and lock them up. But Peter Grant disagrees. Not from a moral high ground, but from the gut. He feels that's not right. He makes a difference for the vulnerable and voiceless. He's a better person than I am. The second thing is his tendency to self-sacrifice. It's so cheesy, but it gets me every time. I'm going on a tangent. Feel free to skip to the next section. This reminds me of the Japanese animation film Weathering with You. Rain is the norm for Tokyo in this future climate disaster world. This girl has the supernatural power to stop the rain, but every time she uses that power, it weakens her, and in the end, she's going to die. Her boyfriend wants to save her, obviously, but the conflict is, what are you going to do if her death is the way to solve the world's problem? He goes to this altar and a sacrifice is required. Then there's this climax and I thought, he's going to die for her on her behalf as a sacrifice on this altar in order to save the world and to save her. But no, there's no sacrifice, there's no solution. They just let the rain fall and the world get flooded. It's a solution, it's a way of thinking and living. What has the rest of the world to do with me? Why would I die for strangers? Fair enough. But it makes the story so unsatisfying. It feels so cold at the end. No one cares, no one loves. Let the whole world drown. I'd hate to live in a world like that, and I'm so glad Peter would not let the world go down that way. Next, my favorite audiobook. For this award, I'm thinking of the voice actor's performance more than the story itself. I have to be able to say, listening to this book is much more enjoyable than just reading it off the page. I mentioned the Rivers of London series earlier. The voice actor makes Peter's frustration so much more frustrated, his quick wit and slow wit so much funnier. But enough of Peter Grant. The winner is 1, 2, 3, 4, The Beatles in Time, written by Craig Brown, narrated by Mark McGann, Kate Robbins and Craig Brown. It's a great book in itself. I think the most effective way of showing you why I love the audiobook so much is to play you a short clip. This snippet is on page 3, chapter 2, and it's included in the free Audible sample, so I hope I'm not breaking any copyright laws.
The actor Victor Spinetti once told this story about them. While filming Help in Salzburg, he caught flu and was confined to bed.
The Beatles came to my hotel room to visit. The first to arrive was George Harrison. He knocked, came in and said, "I've come to plump your pillows. Whenever anyone's ill in bed, they have to have the pillows plumped." And then he plumped my pillows and left. John Lennon came in next and marched up and down, barking, "Sieg Heil, Schweinhund! The doctors are here. They're coming to experiment upon you. Sieg Heil! Heil Hitler!" And he left. Ringo then came in, sat down by the bed, picked up the hotel menu and read out loud as if to a child. "Once upon a time there were 3 Burrs, Mummy Burr, Daddy Burr and Baby Burr." And then he left. Paul opened the door an inch, asked, "Is it catching?" "Yes," I said, on which he shut the door and I never saw him again.
If you know the Beatles well, let me know if they actually sound like that. That's the Scouse accent from Liverpool, if you are not familiar with it. I love it. It's a great book, one of my favorite this year as well. Next, my favorite novel of 2023. The winner is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I chose this one because it gave me the most complicated feelings when I read it. I loved it and hated it. I loved the story, the way she tells the story and her writing style. I hated some of the immediate reactions it triggered. It brought back memories from SARS and COVID, the fear of uncertainty for the future, the fear of sickness and death because of the world she builds feels so real. I felt so sad and devastated about the collapse, as it's called in the novel, but magically, at the same time, I felt surprisingly hopeful. The writing and the story are quiet, beautiful and powerful. It often brought tears to my eyes and made my heart full. And if someone happens to walk into the room when you are reading, you don't want to explain how good it is or how much you love it. You don't want to talk to them at all because you want to savor the moment, just you and the sad and beautiful world. The novel is written from the perspective of a few protagonists and it's narrated from different points in time, some from before the disaster hits, some during the initial stage, and some a few years later. I shared in my October wrap-up how much I enjoyed the novel, partly thanks to a misunderstanding of the summary of the story before I started. So I'm hesitant to tell you what the story is about because I really loved the surprises in the twists and turns. And when I really care about a novel, I try harder not to spoil it for you. I'll just say it's about when the world as we know it is plunged into the dark, how would humanity respond collectively and what would individuals do to survive? What in society and culture would disappear and what would remain? If you are vaguely interested, how about downloading a free Kindle sample to read a couple of chapters on the free Kindle app on your phone and see if you like it. I have 2 favorite non-fiction books from 2023. A New Name is a memoir by Emma Scrivener, published in 2012. It's a Christian non-fiction telling the story of her years struggling with anorexia. I met the author and heard her personal story. She is an incredible speaker. Many of us in the audience came away in tears because we saw the power and beauty come through her weakness and brokenness. I wanted to know more about her, so I read her memoir in one day. It's brutally honest, it's beautiful. I picked this as an example to give you a taste. After her granddad died, death became real for the first time. She said, "For the first time, my parents didn't have the answers. Death was bigger than them, a problem that they couldn't fix. They couldn't protect me from it, or even themselves. Someday, they too would disappear, just like Granda. Everyone would." I searched in vain for explanations. What was the purpose in living if someday it would all end? Why were we here? Death smashed into our homes, but we tiptoed round the wreckage. Why did no one say anything? Our loved ones were like loose change that had slipped down the back of the sofa. Looks like we've lost Great Aunt Ethel, we'd remark absent-mindedly. Adults spoke in riddles. Cousin George had passed away. He'd gone to a better place. What place? Malta? Why didn't he write? And why couldn't we visit? Dad bore my questions with endless patience. There was nothing to worry about, he said. When we died, we went back to the ground, where it was nice and peaceful. Everything was okay. Though well-intentioned, this did nothing to allay my fears. Dad, I concluded, had lost his mind. Nothing to worry about. Nice and peaceful. Of course it was quiet. You were dead, buried alone, and the layers of cold, dark earth. Death was like a horror film come true, a terrifying marauder who stole away those we cared about most. It was the epitome of not okay. Reading the book is like listening to her, sitting across you in a room. I couldn't stop halfway and I just wanted to keep listening. My other favorite non-fiction book is 1599, A Year in the Life of William Shakespeare by James Shapiro. This is not a biography that covers the whole life of Shakespeare. It's about 1 year of his life. The book is arranged by seasons and shows what happens over the course of 1 year. The wars and rumors of war with Spain and Ireland struck a chord when the Chamberlain's man performed Henry IV Part 2 for the Queen and the court at Whitehall at Christmas. How the gathering thunderstorm over an English army on a spring day worked its way into Julius Caesar. The complex relationship between the Arden in As You Like It and the Arden of Shakespeare's ancestry he pursued that summer, and how during that autumn his interest in a new literary form made his plot-wise least original play Hamlet shone the brightest. Those are just a few examples. What was going on in the world in London left fingerprints in those plays and in the characters' worlds. I never knew any of it, and now I do. It was an eye-opening experience. I loved it. It completely changed my habit of reading and understanding Shakespeare's plays out of context, independent of time and space. That's also partly why I want to start reading his contemporaries in 2024. It's one of my reading goals for next year. I said a lot more about it and gave more specific examples in this video. Finally, here's my book of the year, 1599 by James Shapiro. It's certainly the best non-fiction about Shakespeare I read this year, and it taught me the most. It's one of those amazing books that gives me so much information, knowledge and insights, and at the same time makes me think there's so much more I don't know, and I can't wait to find out. Please tell me what are your favorite books and the book of the year for you, for your 2023. And when you leave a comment, have a look at other people's comments. Maybe you'll find your next favorite book there. I look forward to hearing your answers. If you're interested, you can watch the winners from my last year's book awards here. Thank you so much for 2023. Thank you for the kind words, for all the recommendations, for sharing life, and for being such wonderful people. Merry Christmas, everyone. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one.